Hello and welcome to the No One Asked You podcast. I'm reading The Wheel of Time for the first time and sharing the experience with you. This is One Good Turn, The Eye of the World, and today I'm covering Chapter 6. Chapter 6 is picking up, again, right where the last one left off. We've got Rand dragging his father in a cart back to Emmons Field to the village. He is afraid, he's freaking out. The moonlight is helping him see a little bit, but not quite by very much. It also opens with him contemplating the unique nature of this particular wound. He's seen his father take much worse wounds, or wounds that are roughly equivalent in size and shape, rather, and just shrug them off as if they're no big deal. Wash it and move on. But this particular one, his fever is bad. It's making him hot. I'm wondering, I can only presume that there is a magical effect or a poison, a fast-acting poison possibly, that the Trolloc swords are laced with, some sort of taint magic. And he also notes, and this one sort of gets me deep, is seeing the weakness of his father in this state. This guy who is normally so strong. It's not a comfortable place for Rand to be in. He is still reeling from the revelation that Trollocs are real, that there's a Fade, which could be even worse. I guess a Fade is a Myrddraal. I'm curious specifically what the difference is between Myrddraal and Fade. They seem to be one and the same. I'm wondering if it's one of those all Myrddraals are Fades, but not all Fades are Myrddraals type situation. He stops to bandage his father at a specific point, and his dad is mumbling. And I obviously have to pay attention to each and everything he mumbles because it's, I presume, lore, for him at least, Tam's backstory. His first is, "You're still lovely, Kari, still lovely as a girl." So we get a name for Rand's mom. I presume this is Rand's mom, and I'm pretty sure it works out that it both is and isn't his mom. We'll get to that revelation. Rand grimaces at this point. His mother has been dead for 15 years, so the only thing that Rand really remembers of her is that she had soft hands. It's actually quite sad and touching, especially considering the circumstances here where he could potentially lose his father as well. So he tries to play into the delusion for the time being, saying, "Mother wants you to be quiet. Kari wants you to be quiet. Here, drink." And he tries to get him to drink some water. Now, I do note as it covers like how hot he is, how burning up he is, I'm wondering how effective it would be for Rand to like pile the cart with snow or ice. Though as I say that, I don't think there actually is any. I know it's still winter weather, but I don't think there's snow. And that would make the cart that much heavier. So you know what? Retract. He gets his father again on the litter. At one point, he takes his father's belt and sheath and sword and puts them on. And we get this great line: "Belt and sheath and sword together only weighed a few pounds, but when he sheathed the blade, it seemed to drag at him like a great weight." And I love that line because it's not just the physical weight of the sword. This is the first time he's putting this on. It's the weight of responsibility, the weight of manhood, the weight of what it means to use that sword. So I think that is a great line there. He tells himself it's just a big knife, and he remembers all the times he has daydreamed about wearing a sword and having adventures. I think it's very common, particularly in fantasy, for the hero to have that aspiration of being an adventurer, but when it comes to your doorstep and when you're forced into that world, suddenly all you want to do is go home. That's definitely something that comes up in Lord of the Rings. And again, I had heard that Jordan had the Shire in mind when he was building Two Rivers, or writing it, or something to that effect. So I'm sure there will be many opportunities to compare and contrast specifically to Lord of the Rings. There were about a period of 2.5 to 3 paragraphs that I found myself confused just a little bit. He had already decided to make his way to the quarry road and follow that to the village. The danger would almost certainly be greater along the road, but Tam would receive no help at all if he got them lost trying to find his way through the woods and the dark. So that far in, perhaps it's presumptuous of me, but I had presumed that he would be taking the quarry road. So then when I get into this second paragraph, in the darkness, he was almost out onto the quarry road before he knew it. When he realized where he was, his throat tightened like a fist. Hurriedly, he turned the litter around and dragged it back into the trees away, then stopped to catch his breath and let his heart stop pounding. Still panting, he turned east toward Emmons Field. So that far in, then, I think, wait, is he not going to Quarry Road? It sounded like he made it to Quarry Road and then is suddenly not going to Quarry Road. It hadn't occurred in my mind the very first time I'm going through this, reading at a natural pace, that meant that he didn't want to go onto Quarry Road. He just wanted to, walk off the path, along the path. Particularly based off of that first sentence from the first paragraph, he had already decided to make his way to the quarry road and follow that to the village. So I got a little hung up there as I'm reading, such that I had to go back and reread those 2 paragraphs. A second reread didn't quite clear it up for me, but then I get to the 3rd paragraph. Traveling through the trees was more difficult than taking Tam down the road, and the night surely did not help. But going out onto the road itself would be madness. Okay, and then at that point, it's more or less cleared up to me, but that that was his intention all along. So maybe I did a dumb, but nevertheless, that was my experience going through it the very first time. He's continuing on. It's starting to wear on him. He's stumbling, partly from being unable to see, partly from being tired and scared, and partly from keeping his attention and his awareness directed toward sounds that could mean Trollocs following. And then I remember in the last episode, I did take note of how exhausting it was to be chopping all of that wood in light of what's to come later on in that evening, and we get a small little payoff to that here in this chapter. The almost constant struggle not to fall took as much out of him as did the actual work of pulling the litter. He had been up before dawn to begin his chores, and even with the trip to Emmons Field, he had done almost a full day's work. On any normal night, he would be resting before the fireplace, reading one of Tam's small collection of books before going to bed. The sharp chill soaked into his bones, and his stomach reminded him that he had had nothing to eat since Mistress Alvere's honey cakes. So it felt really good to read that, knowing that I took note of all of the extra work that he had done after getting back to the farm. And then we start to get some of Tam's ramblings. They came over the dragon wall like a flood and washed the land with blood. How many died for Lamin's sins? And at this point, a couple of things go through my mind. Is this a story? Because so far, much of this sounds similar to the stories that we've been hearing thus far in the book. Then my mind goes to, or is he talking about his mysterious past? Mysterious to me. And apparently to Rand as well, most likely. It sounds like he doesn't know much about his dad's past. And it seems to be a war story. Dragon wall like a flood. Washed the land with blood. Died for Lamin's sin. Later on, he says, "They call them savages. The fools said they could be swept aside like rubbish. How many battles lost? How many cities burned before they faced the truth? Before the nations stood together against them? The field at Marath carpeted with the dead, and no sound but the cries of ravens and the buzzing of flies. The topless towers of Caerhine burning in the night like torches, all the way to the shining walls they burned and slew before they were turned back, all the way to—" And then Rand clamps his mouth shut. Obviously, I underlined, but the cries of ravens and the buzzing of flies. So where there is death and blood, I'm sure the Dark One follows, or instigated in the first place. We're getting a lot of names that I'm sure with repetition will become more familiar to me. He, the way he describes it, he sounds like a concierge in a way. The shining walls, the topless towers, the war. So I had a little bit of a chuckle there, despite the horrific situation that Rand is in. They're traveling along, and then we get our Nazgul moment from when Frodo first leaves the Shire. Wavering shadows to the east slowly resolved themselves into a horse and rider, followed by the road by tall, bulky shapes trotting to keep up with the animal. The pale light of the moon glittered from spearheads and axe blades. Rand never even considered that they might be villagers coming to help. He knew what they were. He could feel it, like grit scraping his bones, even before they drew close enough for moonlight to reveal the hooded cloak swathing the horseman, a cloak that hung undisturbed by the wind. And I did too. Clearly it was going to be them. And so he tries to be as quiet as possible. The thing, I presume it's the Murdral, or the Fade, looks around, and Rand is so certain it's going to find them. It heads off in one direction, and then eventually it heads back toward the farm, I believe. And so Rand continues on, and we get what I thought was a really nice, aspirational couple of paragraphs. A safe space, a comforting thought. In his mind, he pictured Emmons Field, shutters thrown back and the houses lit for winter night, people shouting greetings as they passed back and forth on their visits, fiddles filling the streets with James Folly and Heron on the Wing. Harl Luhan would have one too many brandies and start singing The Wind in the Barley, in a voice like a bullfrog. He always did, until his wife managed to shush him, and Sen Buey would decide to prove he could still dance as well as ever, and Matt would have something planned that would not quite happen the way he intended, and everybody would know he was responsible, even if no one could prove it. He could almost smile thinking about how it would be. It's a very, very sweet moment there. Then we get some more Tam ramblins. A Vendesora. It said it makes no seed, but they brought a cutting to Cairhine, a sapling, a royal gift of wonder for the king. They never make peace, never. But they brought a sapling as a sign of peace. 500 years it grew. 500 years of peace with those who make no peace with strangers. Why did he cut it down? Why? Blood was the price for Avendoral Dara. Blood the price for Lemon's pride. And then he continues to mutter again. So there's a group that never makes peace that makes peace. And it sounds like the people that they made peace with, amazingly, insulted them or broke that peace. So a lot of really interesting things to imagine here. Seems like a big deal for barbarians who never make peace to make peace. And it invokes wonder at why someone would end that. But then he goes on. Battles are always hot, even in the snow. Sweat heat, blood heat, only death is cool. Slope of the mountain. Only place didn't stink of death. Had to get away from smell of it, sight of it. Heard a baby cry. So two things. Clearly he is at the location of this battle. Don't know if he was a soldier or not, but he was definitely at the battle. The moment you hear baby, the moment you assume it's Rand. And not only do you assume it's Rand, I can't tell if it's because I know what I know or not, but I also assume that whoever this baby is, it's the Dragon Reborn. Their women fight alongside the men sometimes, but why they had let her come, I don't. Gave birth there alone before she died of her wounds. Covered the child with her cloak, but the wind, blown the cloak away. Child blew with the cold. In many ways, I think of the first Thor movie, which is with Loki. But yeah, why would a pregnant woman be at a battlefield? I can get women soldiers. I can't get pregnant women soldiers. That one I don't get. Unless it wasn't like the site of the battlefield, but like whoever won went into like the camp followers' camps and so on. But I really got the sense this was the battlefield. Should have been dead too, crying there, crying in the snow. I couldn't just leave a child. No children of our own. Always knew you wanted children. And then I'm like, oh shit, it is Rand, and Rand's adopted. Always knew you wanted children. I knew you'd take it to your heart, Kari. Yes, lass, Rand is a good name. A good name. And then suddenly Rand's legs lost the little strength they had. This would be devastating to anyone, particularly to Rand. But he's got a lot going on in the immediate. He can't process it right now. So he says, "You are my father," he said aloud, stretching back a hand to touch Tam. "And I am—" The fever was worse. Much worse. Grimly, he struggled to his feet. Tam murmured something, but Rand refused to listen anymore. Throwing his weight against the improvised harness, he tried to put all of his mind into taking one leaden step after another into reaching the safety of Emmons Field. But he could not stop the echo in the back of his mind. He's my father. It was just a fever dream. He's my father. It was just a fever dream. Flight. Who am I? Very exciting. A lot packed into what would otherwise be just rushing him to safety. You get a lot of Tam info there and a lot of Rand info. Now we have this added circumstance to Rand, this possibly orphan mindset. The man that he thought was his father may not be, and he doesn't know, and he can't ask those questions. It's a very specific mindset. In many ways, I think it changes a person. It's a lot with which to grapple. Now, Rand is doing a very good job of compartmentalizing it right now. He's got his immediate necessities to take care of. He has to get Tam to the village regardless. So he's able to brush it aside, but at some point he's going to have to grapple with this in a much more meaningful way, and I'm looking forward to seeing that happen. So good chapter. Thank you all for tuning in. Have a great rest of your week, and I'll see you next time. Okay, thanks, bye.